Right now, in the heavy stillness of your bedroom, you might be holding a glowing screen in your hand, watching the brilliant, curated milestones of other people's lives flit past your eyes. Perhaps you just saw someone receive a major promotion, celebrate a beautiful relationship, or stand in the sunlight of a flawless vacation destination. In a single instant, a cold, heavy ache drops directly into the center of your stomach. Your mind immediately begins to run a silent, toxic arithmetic, calculating how far behind you are, how many goals you have missed, and how much your own unedited reality feels small and incomplete. You lie awake in the dark, feeling a profound sense of lifelong insufficiency, as if everyone else received a perfect master key to existence, while you were left to stumble through the fog without a guide. You worry that you are chronically late, that your time is running out, and that you have fundamentally failed to build a life of true significance. Let that burning restlessness soften for a single moment if it feels right. Notice the physical space that actually surrounds your body tonight. The air in your room has grown cool and perfectly still, completely untouched by the frantic pace of the digital world. Beneath you, a heavy, unadorned cotton quilt holds your weight securely against the mattress, grounding you in the immediate presence of the physical earth. There are no notifications waiting in the dark corners of the ceiling. The walls of your room do not keep a ledger of your achievements, and they do not demand a certificate of success before they offer you shelter. You do not have to be anywhere else, and you do not have to prove your worth to the silence. You are not a broken machine because your life does not match a stylized gallery. The deep frustration you are carrying in your chest is not a sign of failure, but a natural weariness from trying to measure an infinite heart with a tiny, rigid ruler. Tonight, we are not going to force your mind to become completely empty, and we will not pretend that the sting of comparison disappears by sheer willpower. We are simply going to change how you relate to the internal mathematics of your thoughts. Your overthinking mind believes a strange illusion. It whispers that if you constantly track the success of others, you can somehow forge a flawless blueprint to rescue yourself from uncertainty. But this calculation is an impossible trap. Overthinking is not wisdom. It is fear trying to map a landscape that does not exist. The anxious mind behaves exactly like a tired mapmaker who has spent his entire life sitting in a deep subterranean limestone cavern. The cave is completely pitch black, silent, and ancient. The cartographer sits at a rough stone table, holding a block of dry charcoal in his fingers and staring intensely at a single sheet of delicate rice paper. Beside his hand, a solitary tallow candle burns, casting a faint amber glow against the uncarved rock wall of the chamber. Suddenly, a wild bat flits past the flame, throwing a chaotic, fleeting shadow across the stone. In a panic, the mapmaker begins to scrape his charcoal against the paper, trying desperately to sketch a permanent path based entirely on the erratic movements of that passing shadow. He strains his eyes, blackens his fingertips with dry dust, and exhausts his spirit to trace an illusion. Look closely at your own thoughts through the lens of this deep cave. Every time you scroll through a screen and judge your worth against another person's milestone, you are trying to draw your true identity using the fleeting shadow of a bat. The curated image you see online is not a real destination. It is a passing silhouette shaped by a brief flash of light and completely empty of substance. By comparing your unedited internal chaos to their polished external outline, you are exhausting your mind to map a phantom. You are ruining the peace of your current night to chase a line that vanishes the moment the candle flickers. The suffering does not live in your actual life. It lives in the relentless effort to force your soul onto a map that was never meant to hold you. One of the great insights of the Buddha was that we create our own heaviest burdens when we attempt to compute a solid identity through constant measurement. The mind wants to categorize the self as better, worse, or equal to the travelers around us, turning our daily existence into a relentless tournament of worth. But your true nature is not a mathematical equation that needs to be balanced by external approval. You are not a faulty sketch that must be constantly erased, defended, and redrawn to satisfy the gaze of the world. You are the solid, ancient cave floor itself. The limestone beneath the cartographer supports the table, the candle, and the mapmaker without ever needing to track the shadows on the wall. The rock is already absolute, whole, and perfectly sufficient without a single line scratched into its surface. Let us breathe into the exact place where this feeling of insufficiency sits. Bring your awareness into the center of your chest, right where the breath often becomes short and heavy when you feel left behind. This is where the cartographer holds his heavy block of charcoal. You do not need to banish your anxiety to find a moment of physical ease right now. You only need to notice the contraction without judging your heart for feeling inadequate. Let the muscles of your belly widen with your next exhalation. There are no comparisons inside this dark room. The cotton quilt is real, and the floor beneath you is completely stable. You can permit your shoulders to drop away from your throat, leaving the spaces between your ribs open and cool. Let yourself float in the deep neutrality of this realization. When you stop demanding that your life match the curated sketches of others, the heavy burden of insufficiency begins to lose its grip on your chest. You are no longer required to compete with phantoms in the dark. The silence of your room is not an empty deficit that needs to be filled with achievements. It is a vast, uncarved sanctuary that belongs entirely to you. You can step off the treadmill of comparison and simply inhabit the raw, unedited reality of your own skin. There is a deep, profound peace in realizing that you do not need a flawless blueprint to be worthy of your place on the earth. There is no need to complete your life's map tonight, and you do not have to resolve your place in the world before you sleep. The uncarved mountain can be trusted to hold your weight without your constant calculations. Your hands can rest openly on the sheets, with the fingers loose and heavy like smooth fragments of limestone left in the deep dark of the cavern. The mapmaker is allowed to step away from the stone table for these few hours, leaving the rice paper entirely blank under the wide night sky. In a moment, we will descend the slippery steps into an ancient cave temple, where an old nun shows us what happens when we try to draw our true path using the smoke of a single candle. We will see how a young scribe learns to drop his charcoal stick, finding an unshakable stability that does not depend on a single measurement. But before we hear her story, let yourself arrive completely in the reality of this quiet hour. There is no map to complete before the morning, and there are no shadows you are required to capture tonight. You can permit your fingers to go entirely loose against the bedding, letting the dry dust of your day drop away into the dark. Let the slow, echoing silence of the deep stone carry your thoughts into a spacious, uncounted rest. Deep beneath the roots of the mountain, where the sun never reaches, an ancient stone staircase winds down into the earth. The air changes with every step you take. It loses the warmth of the summer fields, becoming cool, damp, and heavy. It smells of ancient limestone, wet clay, and cold groundwater. The footsteps of a traveler echo softly against the narrow stone walls. There is a profound stillness here, a silence that has been protected by the rock for thousands of winters. At the very bottom of these slippery steps lies a hidden cavern temple, a vast chamber hollowed out by time. A young scholar named Tenzin had left the brilliant halls of the great monastery above to live in this subterranean quiet. His heart was filled with a specific, gnawing misery. In the upper world, he had been surrounded by brilliant calligraphers and advanced students. He had watched his peers master the sacred texts with effortless grace. He saw them receive robes of honor, gain the praise of the masters, and move forward into positions of great authority. Every time he compared his own clumsy progress to their smooth advancements, a cold weight would sink into his belly. He felt fundamentally insufficient. He believed he was chronically late, lagging behind in a race that everyone else was winning. To ease his deep anxiety, Tenzin carried a heavy block of raw, natural graphite in his sleeve. His fingertips were always stained a deep, dusty black. He spent his hours down in the cavern temple, frantically trying to record his spiritual state. He would use the sharp edge of the charcoal to draw intricate, complex maps on the uncarved limestone walls. He drew lines to represent his focus, circles to mark his insights, and dark crosshatches to show his failures. He would hold a single tallow candle close to the rock, staring intensely at his sketches. He constantly compared his crude drawings to an ideal path he had constructed in his mind. If a line looked crooked, he would scratch it out with a sharp flint stone, weeping in the dark because his map was never perfect. In this deep cave temple also lived an old nun named Elder Sister Kyo. She had lived in the subterranean darkness for so many decades that her eyes had forgotten how to see the light. Her eyelids remained permanently closed, her face calm and unwrinkled like a stone carving. She spent her days maintaining the vast expanse of the cavern floor. She used a simple broom made of bound mountain reeds, sweeping away the microscopic fragments of dust that fell from the ceiling. She did not read the sacred scrolls, and she did not draw maps. She moved through the pitch-black tunnels with absolute confidence, her bare feet knowing every smooth indentation and every rough ridge of the rock. One cold night, the damp air in the cavern was exceptionally heavy. The slow and rhythmic sound of water drops echoed through the darkness, creating a steady pulse against the silence. Tenzin sat on a small wooden bench before a smooth section of the rock wall, his candle flickering weakly. A wild bat suddenly flew across the high ceiling of the cave, its wings cutting through the dim amber glow. The movement cast a chaotic, fleeting shadow across his elaborate charcoal map. Tenzin gasped, his body tightening with a sudden panic. He believed the moving shadow was a sign of a new error in his mind. He grabbed his graphite block, frantically scraping the charcoal against the stone to adjust his drawing, trying desperately to capture the shape of the shadow before it vanished. His breath came in short, ragged gasps as he worked. His fingers were raw, caked in a thick layer of dark graphite dust. The more he drew, the more confusing his map became. The lines crossed over each other, creating a chaotic smudge of black soot that completely defaced the wall. He fell back against his bench, his chest heaving with a deep, psychological exhaustion. He looked at the perfect calligraphies he remembered from the monastery above, and then he looked at his own ruined wall. He felt entirely hopeless, trapped in a dark prison of his own creation. He felt that his life was nothing but a series of broken lines and missed destinations. Elder Sister Kyo approached the young scribe, her soft footsteps making no sound on the wet gravel. She stopped right behind his bench, her unmoving face turned toward the heat of his candle. She did not offer an academic lecture on the nature of the mind, and she did not scold him for defacing the sanctuary. She reached out her thin, wrinkled hand, her long fingers finding the single tallow candle resting on the stone ledge. Without a word, she blew out the flame. The entire cavern was instantly plunged into an absolute velvety darkness. Every single line, every circle, and every chaotic charcoal smudge vanished from the world. Tenzin let out a sharp cry of protest, his body freezing in the dark. He complained that she had destroyed his work, that he could no longer see his path, and that he was completely lost without his map. The old nun did not move. She reached down through the pitch-black air, her cool palms gently taking hold of Tenzin's raw, dusty hands. She guided his blackened fingers away from his graphite stick, pressing his open palms directly against the uncarved rock wall of the cave. She told him to forget the drawings and to feel what was actually there beneath his skin. The limestone wall was cold, immense, and completely solid. It did not have any boundaries, and it did not move when the bat flew past. It had supported the mountain for millions of years, entirely unconcerned with the drawings of men. As Tenzin held his palms against the cool stone, a strange, quiet realization began to dawn within his chest. The rock did not need his charcoal lines to be a mountain. The solidity was already absolute, whether the candle was lit or dark. He had been so consumed by tracing a passing shadow that he had never actually felt the strength of the sanctuary he inhabited. A profound quiet began to settle into the young man's nervous system. The heavy cramp in his stomach loosened, allowing his breath to flow deeply into his belly. He let the chunk of graphite fall from his fingers, hearing it clatter harmlessly against the stone floor below. He stood in the absolute darkness, his raw hands resting flat against the ancient limestone, feeling its immense stability absorb the heat of his panic. He was still a clumsy scholar, and he still carried the memory of his past failures, but the desperate need to compete with a phantom suddenly lost its grip on his mind. He stood there for a long time, listening to the slow, echoing drop of the water in the deep dark. He was learning to trust the uncarved rock without a blueprint. But the young scribe did not yet understand that the line he was scratching into the stone was not his life. It was only a boundary that kept him from touching the real mountain. The journey into the deeper chambers of his own heart was only beginning, and there were still secrets hidden beneath the stone beds that he had not yet encountered. The absolute darkness of that subterranean sanctuary remains with us, infusing the quiet atmosphere of your own room. You can feel the cool air of the story lingering in the dark space around your bed, bringing a deep and steady rhythm to your breathing. Have you ever felt the identical exhaustion that Tenzin carried in his raw fingers? Have you ever looked at a digital display at night and felt that exact, sudden drop in your stomach because you believed your life was nothing but a chaotic smudge of black soot? The mind reacts to the success of others by instantly entering a state of desperate mathematical comparison. We look at our own quiet, uncarved reality, and we begin to scratch fierce boundaries into our peace with the sharp edge of our own thoughts. The ancient realization pointed out by the Buddha is that our heaviest sorrow does not live in our actual circumstances. Your current life is like that raw, solid limestone wall of the cavern. It is silent, unique, and filled with its own deep and unhurried history. A real and clean ache naturally arises when we experience a setback, or when our plans take a different turn than we expected. This initial pain is a normal human response to a changing world. It is the natural dampness that collects on the cold stone when the seasons shift above the mountain. But look closely at what the overthinking mind does with this honest vulnerability. The mind does not simply sit on the wooden bench and allow the body to feel its natural fatigue. It panics because it cannot guarantee an immediate prize or a permanent destination. It reaches for the heavy block of charcoal, frantically trying to sketch an imaginary path that matches the achievements of the travelers around us. We rub the dry graphite into our own skin, creating a chaotic map of anxiety inside our chest. This is the secondary pain. This is the extra torment that our thoughts build on top of our ordinary human existence. The first pain is simply being an uncarved stone in a quiet cave. The secondary suffering is the exhausting effort to force your soul to match a passing shadow on the wall. This ancient teaching does not ask you to stop feeling your real emotions, and it does not command you to become a cold and dead piece of rock. It does not mean you must live without desire, or look at your goals with absolute indifference. The wisdom points toward a much softer and quieter space underneath the noise. The suffering you feel tonight does not live in the milestone you missed, or in the gallery of images you scrolled through. The agony lives entirely in the way your mind held those images afterward, layering a harsh mathematical verdict over your own living heart. The old nun did not destroy the scribe's life when she blew out the tallow candle. She simply destroyed the false drawing that was torturing his spirit. Let us understand what attachment truly means when it visits your bedroom in the dark hours. Attachment is the tight, suffocating cramp in your thoughts that insists your life must look exactly like a specific blueprint, or you cannot be whole. It is the desperate need to freeze a moving silhouette onto the rock face so you can possess its shape forever. When we attach our happiness to an external measure of success, we are trying to force a wild, flitting creature to stand perfectly still in the dark. We mistake this rigid clinging for a form of safety, entirely unaware that the charcoal stick is what is actually blackening our hands and bruising our fingers. Consider how craving operates within this internal machinery. Craving is the burning restlessness that makes your present reality look like an empty deficit. It whispers that because your path does not match the sacred scrolls of the monastery, your current time is fundamentally wasted. Craving turns you into an anxious mapmaker who cannot feel the solidity of the mountain because he is too busy weeping over a crooked line on his paper. You live in a beautiful and silent sanctuary, yet your thoughts are constantly running through a tournament of worth. You are starving your heart in the middle of an absolute peace, because you are terrified that you are lagging behind an imaginary standard. Mindfulness is simply the willingness to lay down the graphite block and touch the raw limestone without drawing a single line. You can feel the cold wave of insufficiency rising in your throat. You can see the frightening thought that says you are running out of time. But you do not have to scratch a new boundary into your mind to fix the feeling. You do not have to obey that frantic projection, and you do not have to treat it as an absolute truth. You can simply observe the cartographer within your mind, noting that he is tired, dusty, and desperate to prove his worth to the dark. This small pocket of spacious neutrality is where your true rest begins to grow. As these truths begin to settle into the deep lines of your face, the tight chambers of your thoughts begin to open up for a gentle internal movement. Your true awareness is like the vast subterranean cavern that holds the entire mountain. The cave does not evaluate the shape of the bats that fly through its darkness. It does not panic when a single candle flickers out, and it does not feel diminished when its walls remain uncarved by the arts of men. The stone simply provides a wide, unshakable space for the light to shine, and the shadows to fall without being altered by any of them. Tonight, your own heart can become like that vast limestone chamber. You can hold the unedited reality of your life within a space that is larger than your comparison. True compassion is the decision to meet your own feelings of inadequacy with an absolute, unmoving mercy. You have spent many nights overthinking because you did not know any other way to handle the pressure of the world. You did not build these frantic maps of anxiety because you were flawed. You drew them because you wanted to find a safe path through the dark, and you believed that measurement was the only way to protect your soul. Your self-judgment was just a frightened, unguided attempt to rescue yourself from the fear of being forgotten. Compassion looks at your dusty hands and gently reminds you that you do not need to perform to deserve your place on the rock. Tranquility is realized when we release the desperate need to balance the ledger of our worth against the achievements of others. We cannot force our lives to follow a single, standardized blueprint, and we cannot find a magical medicine that makes our timeline match a curated display. True peace begins when we change our fundamental relationship with our own uncarved reality. We allow our path to be exactly what it is, silent, mysterious, and profoundly complete in its own raw form. When you stop throwing charcoal at the stone, the mind experiences a sudden, luminous quiet. You realize that the solidity you have been searching for was never ahead of you on a map. It has been supporting your weight all along. Slowly, the teaching comes closer to your own life. We begin to see that the anxious cartographer in the cave is the very same voice that wakes you up at midnight when your phone is resting on your chest. It is the part of you that counts your missed milestones and feels a cold drop in the center of your diaphragm. By understanding his fear, we can begin to offer him a comfortable place to lay down his tools. We can show him how to step away from the stone table and rest flat against the cool, ancient floor of the mountain. Let this understanding bring a soft stillness into the deep muscles of your spine. You have been carrying the weight of an entire tournament in your thoughts, as if your comparison could force the world to give you a prize. You can abandon that impossible tournament right now. The room around you is dark, silent, and completely free from judgment. Your breath is moving like a slow water drop, entering your chest as a cool space and leaving your lips as a soft release. With every single exhalation, the black soot of your worry is draining away into the dark mattress below, leaving your spirit clean and wide. You are safe enough to let the paper remain blank for the rest of this night. Let us bring this awareness gently back into the room where you rest. You can feel the immediate weight of your body settling against the mattress. There is no need to make any sudden adjustments. If it feels right, allow your shoulders to sink a fraction deeper into the fabric below you. We carry the tight strain of our comparisons in the upper part of the frame. We brace our neck as if we are trying to look over a high wall to see who is running ahead of us. Let that defensive guarding soften right now. The night air in your room is neutral and quiet. It does not ask you to prove your speed, and it does not demand that you cross a finish line before you are allowed to rest. Take a slow breath in through your nose, letting the cool air fill the deep spaces of your chest. Hold that lightness for just a brief, unhurried moment. Now, let the breath leave your lips like a long, soft sigh. There is no rhythm you are forced to perfect tonight. Each exhalation is a quiet invitation to set down the heavy tools of your daily struggle. Perhaps you can notice the subtle rise and fall of your stomach as the air moves through your body. This movement is ancient and natural, completely unconcerned with human measurements. It is a slow tide that belongs only to the immediate present. Move your attention down into your jaw and the muscles around your mouth. We often bite down on our feelings of insufficiency, trapping our silent anxieties behind tightly closed teeth. If it feels right, let your lower jaw relax completely, creating a soft pocket of empty space inside. Let that tightness melt away into the dark. Your face does not need to wear a capable smile for anyone tonight. The darkness around your bed does not require a demonstration of your worth. You are completely unseen, entirely unmeasured and safe. Now, let your awareness travel into the palms of your hands. Let your fingers uncurl completely, resting loose and heavy against the cotton quilt. Your hands are entirely unoccupied in this hour. They are not holding a device, and they are not searching for digital validation. They are beautifully empty, resting on the stable shore of your bed like smooth stones at the bottom of a quiet cave. There is nothing you need to grasp, and there is nothing you are required to build before the morning arrives. Even noticing the subtle warmth in your fingertips is enough to anchor your mind in this clearing. In this spacious quiet, a specific thought may arise to claim your attention. Perhaps it is a bitter memory of someone else's success, or a heavy worry that you have wasted too many years of your life. Do not try to banish this thought by force, and do not judge your heart for feeling small. There is no need to fight the pattern. Instead, you might give this internal movement a gentle name. You can recognize it as the old reflex of the subterranean mapmaker. It is simply the frightened part of your soul trying to scratch a desperate line into the darkness. It is an old habit of protection, but it has grown deeply exhausted from the tournament. In the theater of your imagination, let yourself look down at your open palm. Imagine that you are holding a single heavy chunk of raw natural graphite. The charcoal is cool and completely dry against your skin. This small stone contains the exact essence of the comparison that has been keeping you awake tonight. It holds the weight of every milestone you think you missed, alongside every timeline you believe you ruined, and every judgment you have hurled against your own progress. Feel the solid reality of this burden resting in your hand. You do not have to defend it, and you do not have to use it to draw another map. Walk forward a few silent steps in your mind, moving across the smooth limestone floor of the cavern temple. You are leaving the flickering candle and the messy drawings on the wall far behind you. You approach the edge of a deep, circular subterranean pool that sits hidden in the dark rock. The water in this pool has gathered over centuries, dripping slowly from the high roof of the mountain. It is perfectly still, completely cool, and entirely transparent. It acts like a mirror of pure silence, holding no memories and keeping no records of the world above. If it feels right, extend your hand over the edge of this quiet pool. Open your fingers completely, and let the heavy chunk of charcoal drop into the water. There is a small, hollow sound as the stone breaks the surface. Watch the charcoal sink slowly into the transparent depth, moving down through the cold liquid without any hurry. As it descends, the dry black graphite begins to soften and release its grip. A dark, ink-like cloud of carbon dust begins to billow out from the stone, spreading through the clear water like beautiful wreaths of gray smoke. Do not try to clean the water, and do not panic as the darkness spreads through the pool. Simply watch the movement with a soft, detached awareness. The gray dust expands outward, becoming thinner and more spacious with every passing second. The vast volume of the pool easily absorbs the black soot, neutralizing the heavy carbon without losing its own fundamental nature. The dark lines you were trying to draw on your soul are losing their boundaries. They are turning into harmless, floating shadows that slowly settle onto the deep floor of the ancient rock. The cloud dissolves completely into the dark, and the water returns to its natural, absolute clarity. The pool is perfectly still once more, completely untouched by the stone that entered its depth. The heavy burden you were holding has turned into fine, harmless sand at the bottom of the mountain, where it can never hurt your heart again. The water remains pure, wide and entirely spacious. It does not look for a blueprint, and it does not keep a tally of the stones it has swallowed. It is whole, simple, and complete in the dark. Bring your presence gently back into the physical room where your body lies. Feel the solid support of the mattress beneath your spine, holding your weight without a single condition. The quilt over your limbs is warm and real, and the air you breathe is perfectly fresh. You do not have to settle your life's tournament before the sun rises, and you do not have to heal the ache of your inadequacy by force tonight. The universe is not evaluating your progress, and the silence is not demanding a victory. You are safe enough to let the future remain entirely unmapped for the rest of this night. Even if the mind tries to pick up the charcoal stick again when a new thought arrives, there is no need to feel discouraged. The habit of comparison is just a tired traveler looking for a sanctuary to rest. You can simply notice the urge to measure yourself, and then return your attention to the cool texture of the pillow beneath your head. You are permitted to let the paper remain blank, letting the world move forward while you choose the soft neutrality of your own bed. Your worth is not a sketch that needs to be perfected. It is the absolute ground that holds you. The mind may try to build another boundary when the darkness deepens, but as we walk further into the hidden chambers of the mountain, we will meet an old hermit who knows how to listen to a water drop that never leaves a scar. We will leave the cave temple behind to discover a massive stone basin that catches the ancient groundwater with a slow, echoing pulse. We will see what happens when a traveler stops chasing a legendary lineage and simply aligns her ears with the sound of the raw granite. But for these next hours, let yourself remain resting in the clearing you have made, letting the silent rock absorb your fatigue. Let us walk even deeper into the lightless chambers of the mountain. Leave the temple of the charcoal maps behind. Step carefully onto the narrow, wet rock ledges that wind further into the deep core of the earth. The air here grows significantly colder, carrying the raw, ancient scent of subterranean mineral deposits and deep groundwater. The ceiling has descended, forcing your thoughts to become small, focused, and close to the ground. In this absolute blackness, the noise of the upper world cannot survive. The frantic speed of the market, the pressures of society, and the constant glare of modern expectations are completely crushed beneath millions of tons of solid limestone. You are moving into a space where identity has no value, and where your human history is entirely unknown to the rock. Many years ago, a solitary traveler named Omi walked this identical path through the dark. She was carrying a heavy, cylindrical container made of dark wood, bound tightly with cords of indigo silk. Inside this case rested a magnificent, long scroll of fine mulberry parchment. The scroll was filled with the immaculate golden calligraphy of the imperial scribes. It was a detailed ledger of all the great families, successful merchants, and celebrated scholars of her home village. Omi spent her nights unrolling this document by the weak light of her oil lamp, her eyes burning as she traced the lines of gold ink. The parchment recorded the flawless milestones of everyone she had grown up with. One cousin had constructed a massive stone granary and accumulated a vast fortune in grain. A childhood friend had passed the highest imperial examinations, receiving a robe of embroidered purple silk from the hand of the governor. Another neighbor had established a beautiful, sprawling estate with 3 internal courtyards and a pond filled with rare fish. Every single name on that scroll represented a life that seemed perfectly aligned, complete, and highly valued by the world. Omi's own name was completely absent from the golden ledger. Her life had been a series of broken engagements, failed business ventures, and long periods of silent wandering. Every time she looked at the golden letters, a sharp, icy needle of insufficiency would pierce her heart. She felt like an unrecorded shadow, a forgotten fragment of dust that was hopelessly outpaced by the world. Her mind ran a constant, agonizing calculation, replaying her old mistakes and mourning the years she had wasted. She was consumed by a quiet, burning shame. She believed she was fundamentally late, a failure who had arrived at the banquet of life after all the tables had been cleared. To escape the unbearable weight of this comparison, she had fled into the dark mountain tunnels, seeking a hidden cavern where an old hermit named Master Juro lived in absolute seclusion. Master Juro inhabited a low vaulted chamber far below the path of the underground river. He possessed no books, no sacred scrolls, and no titles of honor. He wore a single garment of coarse gray hemp, stained with the dark mud of the cave. He slept directly on a flat, uncarved limestone slab without the luxury of a mattress or a straw mat. When Omi finally stumbled into his vault, her fingers were trembling with exhaustion as she clutched her wooden container. The only sound in the entire chamber was a slow, rhythmic dripping of groundwater. The water fell from a long, sharp stone needle on the ceiling, dropping into the absolute dark below with a deep echoing resonance. The young woman knelt on the wet gravel, unrolling her precious scroll before the old man. The golden characters glinted weakly in the dim amber glow of a small grease wick. She wept bitterly, explaining that her life felt completely empty, unwritten, and devoid of meaning. She showed him the names of her successful peers, demanding to know how she could endure the agony of being so vastly outpaced. She wanted a spiritual formula to force her destiny to change. She wanted a method to carve her own name into the golden ledger of the world. She believed that until she achieved a matching monument, her life was nothing but a shameful deficit. Master Juro did not lean forward to read the golden calligraphy. He did not praise the achievements of her village, and he did not offer a single word of pity for her emptiness. He rose slowly from his limestone bed, his bare feet making a faint, scraping sound against the cold gravel floor. He reached down and took the delicate mulberry scroll from her hands. Omi watched in horror as he rolled the parchment up tightly, without a single care for the gold ink. He did not throw it into the fire, and he did not tear the paper. He simply placed the wooden case flat on the wet earth near the damp wall, where the moisture of the cave could slowly soften its fibers. He led the young woman to the center of the dark vault, where the sound of the dripping water was loudest. In the middle of the chamber stood a massive, uncarved granite boulder that had fallen from the ceiling thousands of winters ago. The top of this rough stone had been hollowed out naturally by the constant, patient impact of the groundwater, forming a wide, deep water basin. The granite was completely raw, covered in rough ridges, dark mineral veins, and jagged fractures. It bore no inscriptions, no polished edges, and no decorative carvings. It was an anonymous block of rock, hidden in the perpetual dark of the mountain core. The water dropped from the stone needle above, landing directly in the center of the granite pool with a profound, hollow resonance. Plop, plop. The surface of the dark water would ripple softly, expanding outward in perfect concentric circles until the ripples touched the rough granite walls. Then, the water would return to a state of absolute, glassy stillness, waiting in the dark for the next drop to fall. The basin did not try to hold the shape of the ripple. The stone did not try to record the pattern of the impact. Master Juro told the young woman to look closely into the water. He asked her to search the raw granite walls for any sign of a name, a title, or a golden inscription. Omi leaned over the cold stone, her fingers touching the wet, mossy ridges of the boulder. There were no letters, there were no numbers, and there were no marks of human achievement. The basin was completely anonymous, uncarved, and unrecognized by any living soul in the upper province. The old hermit asked her a simple question that echoed through the dark vault. He asked her if the stone basin was a failure because it had no golden title written upon its side. He asked her if the pure groundwater refused to fill the hollow because the granite lacked a certificate of success. Omi stood perfectly still, her hands resting flat against the wet, freezing rock. The steady, rhythmic pulse of the drops filled the entire space of her ears. Plop, plop. A sudden, sharp clarity broke through the tight armor of her self-judgment. She looked back at the wooden container resting on the damp floor, and she finally saw the profound illusion of her lifelong torment. The golden scroll was not a map of her reality. It was a heavy cage of concepts that she had been using to torture her own soul. She had been treating her existence like a blank ledger that had to be filled with honors, entirely blind to the reality that her life was already absolute, whole, and perfectly sufficient without a single inscription. She was destroying the peace of her current days because she was trying to force her unique, uncarved stone to match a collection of golden shadows. Omi did not experience a magical, instantaneous healing. She did not become perfectly enlightened, and she did not pretend that her loneliness had vanished from the earth. But she chose to make one small, disciplined shift in her relationship with her thoughts. She did not open the container again, and she stopped reading the names of those who had outpaced her. She left the silk-bound scroll on the wet gravel floor, allowing the damp cave air to slowly return the mulberry paper back to the soil. She sat down directly on the bare limestone bed beside Master Juro. her movements becoming slow, neutral, and quiet. She closed her eyes in the absolute darkness, letting her hands rest loosely in her lap with the palms open. She stopped chasing a final answer to her inadequacy. She chose to simply sit with the deep uncertainty of her unwritten future, allowing her heart to beat at its own patient cadence. She was no longer trying to weave a blueprint or defend a failure. She was learning to rest as the raw granite basin, simply receiving the present hour without needing to record its shape. Let your own overthinking mind rest beside that echoing stone pool tonight. You can permit the image of that uncarved granite boulder to soften the tight knots inside your own chest. There is no ledger you are required to fill before the sun rises, and you do not have to prove your worth to a single soul tonight. Your spirit can leave the golden scroll on the floorboards of the cave, finding a deep and spacious sanctuary in the unadorned reality of your own breathing. The mountain is holding your full weight, and you are entirely safe to let the drawings go. Let the echoing rhythm of that deep water pool sink completely into your awareness. The image of the uncarved granite basin, resting in the absolute dark, remains steady within your mind. The stone does not look for a name. It does not carry a certificate of success. It simply receives each drop of water as it arrives, letting the ripples expand and dissolve into total stillness. This is the exact stability we are invited to inhabit tonight. We need to examine the hidden machinery of our own inner comparisons. We must look at why our thoughts behave like that anxious mapmaker, frantically scratching charcoal lines into our peace whenever we glimpse the progress of others. The human mind has a deep, survival-driven habit of converting every observation into a rigid measurement. When you look at someone else's curated milestone, your thoughts do not simply see an event. Your nervous system interprets their achievement as a direct threat to your own safety. A sudden panic whispers that you are being left behind in the dark forest. To protect yourself from this cold dread, you attempt to gain control by running a continuous internal calculation. You replay your past choices, looking for the exact moment you took a wrong turn. You rehearse the future, creating desperate blueprints to catch up to an imaginary crowd. This constant evaluation is an exhausting effort to fix an uncertainty that cannot be managed. We use self-judgment as a crude tool to force ourselves into a state of perfection. We look at our internal confusion with a deep sense of shame. The mind tells a toxic lie. It whispers that if we punish ourselves with enough criticism, we will finally find the motivation to match the speed of our peers. We use the stylized achievements of strangers as a whip to drive our tired bodies forward. This continuous friction creates a very heavy, defensive identity. You become the permanent laggard. You turn the feeling of being behind into your primary story, viewing your entire existence through the lens of a chronic deficit. When we turn our insufficiency into an identity, we become deeply attached to our own suffering. We seek approval not only for potential success, but also for our struggle. We look at the perfect galleries of the upper world, and we feel a profound isolation. We believe our internal mess is a unique defect that makes us unworthy of love. The mind seeks to protect this wound by building a hard shell of dejection or deep withdrawal. We stop trying, not because we lack desire, but because the fear of being measured and found wanting is too sharp to bear. We sit before our blank pages and our uncompleted tasks, paralyzed by the phantom of an ideal standard that no human being can ever actually meet. One of the great insights of the Buddhist tradition is that this entire tournament of worth is based on a profound misunderstanding of the self. The mind treats your identity like a solid piece of clay that must be constantly sculpted, measured, and weighed against the clay forms around you. But your true nature is not a competitive form. It is the wide, open awareness that contains all forms. When you look at your life through the lens of comparison, you are trying to measure the sky by counting the birds that fly through it. The success or failure of another traveler does not diminish your fundamental depth by a single inch. Their golden ink belongs to their own mulberry scroll. It has no power to alter the majestic reality of the uncarved rock that holds your weight tonight. When we take this uncalculated clarity deeper into our own psychology, we begin to see how the mind manufactures its own prisons. In a short while, we will look at how this subterranean wisdom can be applied directly to your modern morning routines and your loneliest nights. But first, let us understand the exact difference between the natural weight of human life and the extra torment we add through our thoughts. Let us look at a fresh way to understand this internal mechanism. Imagine a traveler who walks into a deep, ancient stone canyon. The canyon is naturally cool, shady, and damp. As the traveler walks, a light mist begins to fall from the sky, coating their hair and skin with fine drops of moisture. This moisture is the first pain. It is the simple, unavoidable reality of being alive in a world of changing elements. It represents your ordinary challenges, your natural fatigue, and the neutral setbacks that occur on every human path. This dampness carries no judgment. It is just the weather of the world, arriving and departing without any personal malice toward your journey. But look at what the anxious traveler does with this world weather. They do not simply walk through the canyon and allow their skin to be damp. They feel an intense, desperate panic because they believe the moisture is a sign of their own failure. They want to be perfectly dry, like the polished statues in the sunlit plazas of the city. So they reach down and pick up a handful of sharp, jagged flint stones from the canyon path. They begin to rub these rough stones violently against their own skin, trying desperately to scrape the moisture away. They slash their arms, bruise their chest, and cause their own skin to bleed in the dark. The wounds they create are deep, burning, and intensely painful. This is the second pain. This is the extra suffering the mind manufactures through its absolute resistance to reality. The traveler is no longer suffering from the light mist of the canyon. They are drowning in the agony of their own self-inflicted cuts. They look at their bleeding limbs and believe the canyon is a cruel, hostile prison, completely blind to the reality that their own hands hold the sharp flint. The mist was harmless, but their desperate demand to be perfectly dry is what is actually destroying their body. Peace does not come from finding a secret path out of the canyon, and it does not come from stopping the mist from falling. We cannot dry up the sky of our human existence, and we cannot prevent ordinary difficulties from touching our days. True tranquility is realized when we change our fundamental relationship with the dampness. We learn to drop the sharp flint stones of our self-criticism. We allow our skin to be wet without deciding that the wetness means we are broken. When you stop scraping your own flesh, the deep cuts begin to close naturally, leaving your body intact and at ease within the cool shadow of the rock. Let this illustration bring a soft, clear neutrality into the core of your chest right now. Your feeling of being behind is just the natural mist of a modern world that moves at an artificial speed. The digital screen hurls thousands of passing shadows at your eyes every day, creating a constant illusion of rapid acceleration. Your authentic life moves at a different, more organic pace, like the slow accumulation of limestone in the dark. This slower rhythm is not a defect. It is the ancient, steady pattern of the earth. When you judge yourself for not matching the frantic speed of the upper world, you are picking up the flint stone of shame to scrape your own spirit. You do not have to fix your whole life before you are allowed to rest your head tonight. The feeling of insufficiency is not an absolute truth that requires your immediate obedience. It is simply a passing ripple on the surface of your awareness, as harmless as the gray dust dissolving into the deep subterranean pool. You can look at the anxious mapmaker inside your head with eyes of immense, unmoving forgiveness. He has been tracing shadows for so many seasons because he was terrified of being lost in the dark. He was only trying to find a safe destination for your love. You can honor his effort without allowing him to control your night. Let your open palms rest quietly against your bedding. Feel the immediate reality of the mattress below you, which supports your weight without any scale of measurement. The heavy quilt is stable, wrapping your limbs in a sanctuary that requires no credentials. You can let the digital maps dissolve into the shadows of the room, leaving the future entirely unwritten for the rest of this night. The universe is not counting your achievements, and the darkness is not keeping a score of your failures. You are completely safe to drop the flint stones of your self-judgment, letting your tired mind rest flat against the ancient floor of the mountain. Let us take this deep cavern wisdom up into the bright static of your ordinary days. You do not spend your mornings sweeping dust from a limestone temple floor. You do not sit on a wet gravel path below the mountain roots. Yet, The very moment you open your eyes in the morning, your mind may instantly reach for the heavy block of charcoal. You pick up your phone before your feet even touch the floorboards. You scroll through an endless gallery of announcements, notifications, and curated milestones. In a single second, the internal mapmaker wakes up with a violent start. Your chest contracts, and your breath becomes shallow. You are suddenly standing before that dark rock wall again, frantically trying to trace the erratic shadows of a passing world. Maybe you have felt this heavy ache during the quiet moments of your afternoon. You find yourself waiting for a text message that does not arrive. You check your device every few minutes, looking for a sign of reassurance or approval. Every silent hour feels like a direct verdict on your personal value. Your thoughts translate the silence into an immediate emergency. They whisper that you are being forgotten, ignored, or left behind by the crowd. This is the modern candle flame. Your thumb sliding across the glass is the cartographer frantically dragging his charcoal to map a phantom. You are ruining the immediate peace of your kitchen to chase a silhouette that has no substance. Think of the exhausting performance we run when we are hurting inside. You walk into your workplace or greet your friends with a pleasant, capable smile. You pretend that you are completely secure, organized, and moving forward on a flawless path. But beneath that stylized display, your heart feels completely heavy and unwritten. You are replaying an old career mistake, a financial loss, or a relationship that unraveled years ago. You look at a colleague who seems to possess an effortless trajectory, and a cold drop of insufficiency falls into your stomach. You are standing in the gentle mist of an ordinary day, yet your own hands are holding the sharp flint stones of shame, scraping your own skin to force a flawless appearance. Consider the deep burden of comparing your material world with the wealth of your peers. You look at those who have constructed massive stone granaries, accumulating titles and property with every passing season. You look at your own modest room, and you feel an intense, suffocating shame. Your mind transforms your quiet stability into a shameful deficit. You believe that because you do not possess a golden monument, your time has been completely wasted. This comparison is a heavy cage of concepts. It blinds you to the beautiful reality that your life needs no external decorations to be completely holy. You are judging your uncarved stone by the weights of another person's scale. When the day finally ends and the house grows quiet, the calculation does not stop. You lie awake under your sheets, replaying your entire timeline against the achievements of your peers. You count the goals you did not reach by the age you specified in your youth. The mind tells you that you are fundamentally late, a faulty traveler who has run out of time. If you feel an urge to rest, a harsh internal voice immediately judges your fatigue. It tells you that you have no right to sleep because you have not earned your success. You turn your bed into a courtroom, trying to fix your perceived flaws through a state of constant self-punishment. Think of the profound exhaustion of checking your phone for constant reassurance before you sleep. You scroll through the digital landscape, hoping to find a single message that tells you that you are enough. You look at the flashing lights in the dark, seeking a temporary shield against your fear of being left behind. But the device cannot grant you a permanent shelter. It only throws more chaotic shadows against the walls of your mind, overstimulating your nerves and keeping your chest tight. This digital search is just a frantic effort to weave a blueprint out of smoke. It keeps your spirit trapped on the sandbar, entirely removed from the immediate peace of your own breathing. True spiritual discipline does not require you to escape your modern life. It does not ask you to throw away your phone or abandon your career goals. The wisdom of the Buddha is practiced in the very small, unglamorous pauses of your daily routine. Tomorrow, when you feel that sudden sting of comparison after looking at a screen, you can choose to make one small shift. Do not click the next notification. Do not rush to redraw your life's plan in a panic. Simply drop your gaze to your own hands. Let the air enter your torso as a cool space, and let it leave your lips as a warm release. In a moment, we will see how an ordinary morning can turn from a frantic tournament of shadows into a space as stable as the uncarved rock. This simple pause is the moment you refuse to pick up the charcoal stick. You are noticing the frightening thought without giving it your absolute obedience. You do not have to treat your feelings of inadequacy as an ultimate truth. When the mind whispers that you are not enough, you can look at that thought as nothing more than a passing bat shadow on the wall. It arrives, it moves across your awareness, and it departs into the dark. It has no power to alter the majestic reality of the stone floor that holds you. By choosing not to fight the shadow, you leave the cavern wall perfectly clean and wide. You can care deeply about your life without gripping the map until your knuckles bleed. When you work toward your goals, you can act with hands that are light, flexible, and fully present. You do not need to force every outcome to match a golden blueprint. Let the uncarved granite basin of your heart receive each event exactly as it drops from the sky. If a plan succeeds, let the ripple expand naturally. If a setback occurs, let the water return to its natural glassy stillness. You are no longer an anxious collector trying to trap a permanent silhouette. You are the deep pool that effortlessly survives every impact. The support of your mattress is already absolute. It is entirely unconcerned with your income, your relationship status, or your digital reputation. You do not need a certificate of merit from the world before you are allowed to close your eyes. Your life is not a blank ledger that must be filled with honors to possess a valid meaning. It is an independent sanctuary, whole and complete in its own raw form. Let the golden scrolls of the upper world rest in their wooden cases tonight, while you choose the soft neutrality of your own dark room. Think of the immense freedom that arrives when you stop trying to fix your soul through shame. For too many seasons, you have used self-criticism as a whip, believing that self-hatred could rescue you from uncertainty. But the flint stone only causes your own spirit to bleed. You can look at the tired cartographer inside your thoughts, with eyes of absolute unmoving mercy. Forgive yourself for the times you fell into the trap of comparison. Forgive your heart for feeling small in a world that moves at an artificial speed. Your worry was just an unguided, frightened attempt to keep yourself safe from being forgotten. You can let go of the tournament without disappearing from the earth. The habit of overthinking is just a weary traveler, looking for a place to set down his heavy tools. Tonight, you can leave the entire map unwritten. The future can remain a complete mystery, and the past can stay buried in the quiet soil. There are no deadlines you are required to meet before dawn, and there are no expectations you must satisfy to deserve your shelter. Let your shoulders drop away from your throat, leaving the long muscles of your neck completely loose and heavy. The dark night is wide enough to contain your unedited reality, providing a calm clearing where your spirit is allowed to finally stop running. The absolute darkness of your room has completely deepened now. The quiet of the midnight hour is entirely total. The heavy cotton quilt resting across your chest carries the deep solidity of the uncarved mountain. You can feel your body sinking further down into the stable expanse of your bed, leaving behind every frantic measurement of the day. Your breathing has slowed to a patient, rhythmic cadence, echoing the silent water drops that fall in the hidden chambers of the earth. With every slow breath out, the remaining tension in your temples begins to dissolve, vanishing like fine charcoal dust into a deep, transparent pool. You do not need to trace a single shadow tonight. The single tallow candle has been blown out, and the blank rice paper is completely safe in the dark. Let the image of the ancient limestone cavern fill the entire field of your resting mind. The long, slippery stone steps are gone. The crowded marketplace of the upper world has vanished into an absolute silence. There are no golden scrolls to read, and there are no immaculate lineages you are required to match. The wooden container bound with indigo silk has been laid down on the wet gravel path, allowing the damp cave air to slowly return the parchment back to the earth. Your hands are beautifully empty, resting loose and heavy upon the sheets with the palms turned upward. They hold no charcoal sticks, and they carry no sharp flint stones of judgment. Your fingers are completely relaxed, softened by the cool neutrality of the night. Listen to the vast protective silence of the deep stone. Far beneath the roots of the forest, the mountain stands in perfect stillness, entirely unconcerned with the speed of the outer world. It does not look for a name, and it does not maintain a ledger of achievements. It does not feel diminished because its walls remain raw and uncarved by the arts of men. The limestone simply exists, providing a massive, unshakable sanctuary that holds your full weight without asking for a single credential. Tonight, your own awareness can become like that ancient cavern. You can permit your unedited life to rest within a space that is larger than any human measurement. You are returning home to the absolute ground that has supported you all along. The steady, rhythmic sound of the groundwater continues its patient pulse in the deep dark. The drops fall from the stone needle above, landing directly in the center of the massive granite basin. The water ripples softly, expanding in smooth circles until it touches the rough stone walls, and then it returns immediately to a state of absolute, glassy stillness. The basin does not try to hold the shape of the ripple, and it does not try to record the pattern of the impact. It simply receives each moment as it arrives, letting the movement dissolve without keeping a tally of the past. Let your own mind become like that quiet granite pool. Let every lingering worry, every comparison, and every feeling of insufficiency be nothing more than a passing ripple that fades into the deep stillness of the water. You are granted absolute permission to stop solving your life tonight. The heavy tournament of worth has closed its gates for these hours, and there are no phantoms left for you to outpace in the dark. You do not have to correct your old mistakes before you sleep, and you do not have to forge a perfect blueprint for tomorrow's sunrise. The future can remain completely unwritten, hidden like the deep tunnels that wind through the core of the mountain. The universe is not auditing your progress, and the silence is not requiring a victory to grant you its shelter. You are whole, simple, and entirely sufficient just as you are, resting on the stable floor of this quiet night. Feel the profound heaviness creeping into your limbs. Your legs are growing loose and weighted, sinking deep into the mattress like ancient stone blocks settling into the earth. Your torso is perfectly relaxed, expanding softly with the cool air and releasing all resistance with the warm surrender of your breath. The muscles of your face are completely smooth, entirely free from the performance of the day. The tight focus behind your eyes has dissolved into the vast velvety darkness of the room. You have dropped the sharp flint stones of your self-criticism, leaving your spirit clean, unburdened, and beautifully at peace within the shadow of the mountain. The habit of overthinking is just a tired cartographer who has finally laid down his tools. He has stepped away from the rough stone table, leaving the delicate rice paper blank and unmapped. He has realized that his true nature cannot be captured by tracing the fleeting shadows of a wild creature. He is choosing to rest directly on the bare limestone floor, letting the ancient stone absorb the remaining heat of his panic. You can let that tired worker within your own mind go to sleep tonight. You can trust the uncarved rock of your being to hold everything without your constant management. The candle is dark, the maps are gone, and the mountain is perfectly still. Let the darkness grow wider around your body. The space in your room has become completely vast, merging with the infinite silence of the subterranean world. Every slow breath you take carries you further down into the quiet center of your own heart. You are leaving the digital marketplace behind, letting the flashing lights and the golden ink dissolve into the deep shadows of the past. There is no one to impress in this dark chamber, and there is no one you are required to surpass. You are completely alone with the raw, beautiful reality of your own existence, resting as an uncarved stone beneath the protective weight of the earth. Feel the deep neutrality of this rest. It is a peace that does not depend on a successful day, or a flawless relationship, or a validated career. It is the natural, unadorned peace of your true nature, which has always been whole, even when your thoughts were frantic. The ripples on the granite pool are growing smaller and smaller, fading into an absolute, mirror-like stillness that reflects nothing but the quiet dark. The slow drop of water continues its ancient cadence, a steady pulse that reminds you that you are alive, you are safe, and you are entirely permitted to let go of the struggle. The sound is distant, soft, and completely comforting, like a lullaby sung by the mountain itself. Your mind is floating now, drifting away from the need for answers. The questions that kept you awake have lost their sharp edges, turning into harmless clouds of gray dust that have completely settled onto the floor of the deep pool. You do not need to know where your path will lead tomorrow, and you do not need to verify your position on the map. It is enough to simply be here, a quiet presence breathing the cool night air. Wrapped in the secure embrace of the heavy quilt, the mapmaker has closed his eyes. The parchment has returned to the soil, and the sanctuary is completely at rest, sunk deep into the velvet darkness. Your body is completely integrated with the stillness of the earth. The mattress below you takes your full weight without a single question, providing an unmoving foundation for your sleep. You are safe to let go of the last thread of control, letting your spirit drift down into the spacious, uncounted hours of the night. The mountain is holding you, the water is clear, and the sanctuary is whole. And what if the immaculate blueprint you have been trying to sketch for your life was always an illusion, and the true sanctuary was this uncarved rock that has been holding your weight all along?